I just beat my first run of Hades 2 and I need to talk about how amazing this early access is so far. The sheer amount of dialogue to the smooth combat and the very appealing visuals and artwork, especially you, Aphrodite. Ooh, mama. Let's not forget about the unique twist of gameplay made from the original, but with just enough of the same loop to keep me as hooked as I was to the first entry. So let's get down to business and dive into the underworld to talk a bit about When I first heard Hades 2 was going into early access, my eyes almost rolled out of my head. The first thought was, oh great, another game to stay in early access hell for the next 5 years. But the quality and quantity of content right now is beyond abundant for an early access release. I've had no issues so far in regards to how this game runs, nor have I had any annoying bugs or glitches, which AAA games can't seem to nail on their official releases. Lately, I've been jumping around from game to game without anything sticking, especially single player games. I like a lot of the games I've been playing, don't get me wrong, but I always end up abandoning them for whatever reason. But so far, Hades has been that fix for me. It's fast and addicting. Even when you die over and over again and have to start from the very beginning, it'll feel like you're only playing for maybe an hour or two, then all of a sudden it's 3 in the morning, you're on the last boss, and then when he's one hit, boom, you're back to square one. Perfect build lost, ready to go again. But what makes it so addicting? Quite a few things, actually. Let's start off with the dialogue. A lot of games will just have dialogue dumps to get you caught up with the story, characters, or world of a game. Not Hades, though. They get you into the gameplay as soon as possible, giving bits and pieces of character lore or story every time you die. The system of having new dialogue appear when you die is perfect in my eyes. It gives you a small break from the sheer rage you can feel while dying over and over, so you can actually digest the story over time and at your own pace. I died a lot in this game, and each time the NPCs always had something new to say. I would think for an early access game a bunch of dialogue would just be repeated over and over, but nope, there's a ton to be found. It's even all voice acted, which is also really surprising to me. I was already assuming that not every character would have a voice due to the early access, but I was wrong. Another thing is the artwork and how each of the gods are portrayed. Something I noticed in Hades 1 is most of the gods, when they popped up, they seemed like they were chilling in their depictions. But in Hades 2, all of them look battle ready in their armor, to match the story of Olympus being invaded. It's just a nice touch. On top of that, the artwork alone is just phenomenal. I've been loving the art style of Hades since the original, and I'm happy they kept the same type of artwork. Even the ambiance is amazing. I love all the background music in this game, which I think is pretty important if you're going to keep going through the same levels from death, especially when you get to the siren bosses and they're just jamming out the whole time. Moving on to the most important part, the gameplay. Hades 2 feels a little slower than the original, but not in a bad way, it's just different. The dashing into the sprint mechanic feels good to me. Yeah, in the original you can have a double dash, but I feel like in this one, it makes you actually think about when to use your dash more strategically, since the dash's cooldown is way slower than the original. If both Zag and Melanie had the same mechanics, it'd be pretty lame, but this new sprint makes approaching combat feel way different and forces you to approach enemies in a unique way. The weapons I'm kind of iffy on though, honestly. I personally only really enjoyed 2 of them, which are the daggers and the big axe, but I understand that's all personal opinion. And on top of that, once you get to a certain point, you can have modifications for each weapon like the original, so it's enough variation for me. There's also a slot left open for another weapon to be released, so I think there's definitely something for everyone's preference or playstyle. Other than that, the enemy designs and variations are fun as well. Each of them are designed for whatever area they're in to keep up with the new environments and also play on whatever environment they're in. For example, in the water levels, you got the siren bosses or the hermit and fish-like enemies, or on the maps going to the surface, you have more humanoid type enemies. Everything just makes sense in the zones you're in. The last thing I want to touch on with the gameplay specifically is all your deaths feel like earned, I would say. Like you deserve to die. It's something that you did wrong in that moment. And I really enjoy that in games. You don't really feel bullshitted out of your death or anything like that. It's something that you did wrong that you can improve on your next run. On the topic of the surface, let's talk a bit about the maps or zones and how it's able to separate itself from the original. Let's start off with the underworld. All of the zones are new and fresh, but still keep with the vibe of the underworld. When I first started playing, I assumed that all the zones were just going to be rehashed versions of the original, but with some type of unique twist on it. I was wrong. Each zone that you go through is unique with its own specific vibe to it, from the underwater zone, Oceanus or Oceanus. How the fuck do you say that? And hearing the Siren's distant song throughout the whole entire zone. From the last map of the underworld, Tartarus, which mirrors the first zone from the original, but with its own twist of it being covered in the sand from Kronos. I really like the twist of the last zone, specifically because of the nostalgia from the first entry and remembering what these halls used to look like. And quite literally on top of all of this, you have the surface world to play through to get to Olympus itself, with its whole new sets of zones not seen before. before. I love this. It basically doubles the content, so if you ever get bored of one, just switch it up and go to the other. For me, it creates endless replayability. And even though you can't get to Olympus itself right now, I'm really excited to see the designs they have in store for those maps to come. Overall, I really do enjoy Hades 2, and at a $30 price point, you get a ton of quality content so far. The only thing I worry about with this game is the early access itself, because like I said, who knows if it'll stay in early access hell for the next 5 years, or maybe it'll release soon. Only time will tell.